So, Nova. She's been one of the most used frames that I've been using since last year, I believe. And quite honestly, she's just too good. She fits into pretty much every scenario depending on what build you use, and that's pretty much what I'm going to go over on this video. I'm going to go ahead and showcase my build for her 3 speeds. So yeah, let's go ahead and just jump right into the builds and explain what they're good for. Alright, so this is my build for Slova, and you'll see that each and every one of these builds have similar mods setups to them. That's because each and every one of these builds is a tanky support build for her. Why? Well, because I like making Nova tanky. She's rather squishy, so I prefer you being able to use her in a more tankier way. This showcases with, of course, Guardian, Adaptation, and Molecular Fission. Now, if you don't know what Molecular Fission does, basically what this mod does is whenever an enemy gets killed under the effects of Molecular Prime, then she generates a ball from her first ability, of course if she has it active. So this allows her to keep her first ability up all the time. And what her first ability does, if you don't know, is that each and every one of those balls that she has give her damage reduction. I believe it caps at 90%, I mean. I think that you can have more, it just depends on the duration that you have. And that's another thing that's very important about Nova. Duration is everything. And I mean everything. This build does not have any range at all, but that's just because it doesn't need it. She doesn't need it because it works with duration. So the more duration that you have on your Nova, the more that Molecular Prime expands. Now, range does affect some of her abilities, like her portal or her first ability, but it doesn't affect her Molecular Prime. Really, her first ability doesn't even benefit that much from range, because the more range that you have, the more it is likely that your boss will attack other enemies. So having less range, prevents that from happening, so you don't lose any stacks. Now the power strength that this build has is enough to make Nova's Molecular Prime slow enemies to its maximum potential. I believe it's 75, and it doesn't go above that. So anything above this power strength is just really overdoing it, because it's not doing you any good at all. Slow is like one of the most useful of the 3 speeds, and that's because, well, it's used for most of the missions in this game. It's useful for interceptions, mobile defenses, disruptions, excavations, or some excavations if you don't want to slow down enemies, and some survivals. In some survivals you just don't want to slow down enemies, but she's useful for a wide variety of the mission types in this game, and that's why she's one of the most useful ones. Now, that's not to say that her other builds aren't useful. They're really good, and especially at what they do specifically. So let's move on to the next one. Now, this is her speed build, and pretty much it's the polar opposite than her slow build. Well, that's because, well, with power strength, her Molecular Prime slows down enemy. Now, with negative power strength, it speeds up enemies, and you're able to do this with power donation and overextend it. Now, this comes at a price of having range, so it might hinder your ability, your first ability, but that really doesn't matter that much with this build, because you're mainly using this for XP farms or resource farms, or even speeding up some defenses like sortie defenses or some reward defenses that come along. Well, this build helps out with that. Not to mention that with this build, a lot of enemies are going to be coming at you at a higher speed than regular, so you're going to get a lot more kills, or at least have quicker kills, because enemies are coming at you with a different amount of speed than with the slow build. So, the range really doesn't affect it that much in this scenario. It's also worth mentioning that this build particularly can be really useful for things like Sanctuary Onslaught if you're in a squad, since you're helping your allies have enemies sped up to kill them a lot faster, as well as debuffing them. So this is her regular speed build. It doesn't have any power strength or any negative power strength. It just stays at its default power strength. Why would you use this? Well, for a couple of reasons. Whenever you don't want to speed an enemy up or slow them down, this is usually what you should use. And the scenarios that you would use this would be mainly in arbitrations, or in some cases maybe Sanctuary Onslaught. But really, mostly arbitrations, because really you don't want to go ahead and speed them up in arbitrations, unless of course your squad members really want to challenge themselves. But aside from that, if you're doing it with randoms, don't torture them like this, and just go ahead and use a regular speed build. It's good for arbitration, excavation, defense, and survivals. So you don't speed them up, you don't slow them down, you don't slow them down, you don't slow them down, you just keep them at a regular pace, while also debuffing them with your molecular prime, and staying up with your molecular fission, and with your, well, tankiness of this build. And that's really what I like about Nova. You're pretty much able to use her for most of the content in this game, aside maybe spy missions, but I mean, you got your operator for that, so it's not like it really matters. Now, since this build doesn't require any power strength or negative power strength, you can use a couple of slots that are available, since you don't need to use any of those mods, to use them for whatever you please. As you can see, I use them to have more health, because I usually use regular Nova to go ahead and run arbitration missions as long as possible, so I like to have durability on my Nova, or an additional durability, because pretty much these other builds can do the same and stay alive, but I like to just have that little bit of extra health, because it helps, I guess. But you can use it for whatever you want. If you want to go ahead and have more efficiency, if you want to go ahead and have more duration, by all means, you're very welcome to make any changes to these builds as well. Now, all in all, Nova is an amazing Warframe, and I suggest it to anyone that has not used her before, or any new players that wants to get their hands on a frame that helps them along the whole path of Warframe. Then really, use Nova. She's an incredible Warframe, and even without some of these mods like adaptation or molecular fission, she's very efficient in what she does, and it'll really help you guys out, throughout your journey in Warframe starting up. Now, that's pretty much it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and of course drop a like if you did, or subscribe, whatever. And yeah, I'll see you guys in another video, I guess.